Well, there it go. There it go, man. This has been a really busy week. It's not even free agency yet, and everything is already all over the place and chaotic. Apparently, the Washington Commanders are cutting safety linebacker hybrid Landon Collins. Of course, this is your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we gotta break down everything going on, how much money we save, how much dead cap will still currently be on our roster, even after cutting Landon Collins. But the most important part is how much money do we save, and is this enough for us to actively attack free agency this coming Monday? Do we have a chance at like a Bobby Wagner? Do we have a chance at a Jordan Hicks? We're gonna talk about all of that. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Be on the lookout for all kinds of content. I'm already working on a Carson Wentz film session and how Scott Turner's offense could actually help him get back to that top 15 quarterback version of himself that he can be. And I'm gonna show literal parallels in what Scott Turner tried to do with Taylor Heinicke and how Carson Wentz can actually make those plays work out very well, especially the deep ball. I'm gonna do a whole film breakdown. So stay tuned for all of that and all updates coming up. I'm also working on a video on how the Washington Commanders can get more money heading into free agency as far as restructuring contracts. So be on the lookout for that as well. That's going to be closely related to this video, but it's going to go into more detail as far as other players currently on the roster that we can restructure to create some more money. So be on the lookout for all of that, man. And without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so the Washington Commanders are expected to release star defender Landon Collins after the two sides did not agree on a restructured contract. Collins will now hit free agency to cash in once again. And remember, we signed Landon Collins to a 6-year, $84 million contract in 2019. And after only 3 years into that contract, we are cutting him to save money. With no base guarantee left on the pack, the move saves Washington $6.482 million on the salary cap this season, but we will continue to take on $9.6 million worth of dead money. Also, for those of y'all who may want to know this, Collins had 81 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 interceptions last season, and he missed some games due to injury, quite a few games. And this is pretty confusing because now we have a hole in our secondary / linebacker group. We already had a hole in the linebacker group. I've been stressing get a middle linebacker at all costs. If you got to get Jordan Hicks, even though he's more of like an outside guy, I'll still take him. I'm not saying no to Jordan Hicks. I'll take Bobby Wagner. And if we miss on all of those free agent linebackers, including AJ Johnson for the Denver Broncos, if they don't re-sign them or tag them or anything, then you can get like Darian Bevers, the Cincinnati linebacker, later in the draft, maybe second round, because we don't have a third round pick anymore. So, I mean, hoping that he slides all the way to the 4th round, I don't think he will. Not with that size and athleticism. But again, we already had a hole at linebacker. Now we have an even bigger one because Landon Collins shined in that hybrid linebacker safety role where he was more of a linebacker than anything. I mean, that 4-game win streak we went on after the bye week, a lot of it was due to the fact that we finally put Landon Collins in that hybrid linebacker role instead of having him out here running cover 2 and cover 3 as a pure safety. Our defense finally looked like it clicked. Everybody just looked like they were on the same page. And again, Landon Collins was one of the biggest reasons for that 4-game winning streak. We beat the Buccaneers, we beat the Raiders, we beat Russell Wilson, we beat the Panthers, one of the very few games that they had pretty much fully healthy Christian McCaffrey all season. That team is completely different when Christian McCaffrey is there and healthy and playing versus when he's not. We beat all 4 of those teams in a row when we finally moved Landon Collins to that hybrid linebacker safety role. It made our defense look elite again. And again, he was a big part of that. And then Landon Collins got hurt. A lot of players on both sides of the ball and special teams as well got hurt. Half of the team caught COVID. So that's when the 4-game win streak just went down the drain. But when everything was solid, when we were relatively healthy, because we weren't even fully healthy during that 4-game win streak, we were still already pretty hurt, especially offensive line wise. But we were able to put all of those excuses to the side and go out there and beat really good teams, playoff caliber teams. And some of those games were like prime time, late night only game on television at the time. It wasn't even like we were just beating guys at 1 p.m. when nobody's watching. And that 4-game win streak showed what we could truly be. And it really sucks to lose Landon Collins because, again, who knows what our defense looks like without him there now moving forward. I mean, of course, we're going to draft guys. Hopefully, we are very aggressive in free agency. I really want a Bobby Wagner, a Jordan Hicks or AJ Johnson at linebacker. But even with one of those guys at linebacker, who's going to play that Buffalo nickel role? I mean, technically Cameron Curl is supposed to, but Landon Collins and Cameron Curl were on the field at the same time and it worked out very well. So if they want to continue to deploy a similar defense like that, that means Cameron Curl's going to have to continue doing what he was doing in the secondary, and we're going to need a guy to fill in for Landon Collins. Now, I mean, you could try to see if Jamin Davis, you make him lose some weight. We've already pretty much punted on the idea of making him a Mike linebacker. So instead of him being like a full-blown Will, if you could just make him like a linebacker safety role, let him be basically what Landon Collins was, maybe that works out as a cheap option. Or maybe you're hoping one of those younger guys like Khaleke Hudson or Derek Forrest becomes that guy. I don't know. Khaleke Hudson showed some potential at times last season. And again, my idea is, because Jamin Davis is never going to be that Mike linebacker. We're in nickel most of the time anyway, so it's usually only going to be two linebackers on the field. There's no way you sit Cole Holcomb with how well he played at pretty much any linebacker position role we wanted him to play in last year. And you still need a Mike. Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis are not Mike linebackers necessarily. Cole Holcomb filled in quite nicely, but ideally you want him at outside linebacker. So where is Jamin Davis even going to be on the field? And at this point, I feel like the hole that Landon Collins leaves is probably the best spot for Jamin Davis at this point. Because, again, I want us to go get a Mike linebacker, which could be Bobby Wagner, which could be AJ Johnson, which could be Darian Bevers in the draft. And where does that leave your first round pick, 19th overall, just a year ago, to only be like a pure will linebacker, only on the field like 30% of snaps? Or you could try to groom him to be what Landon Collins was for us in that 4-game win streak and see where that takes us. Either way, we already had a big hole at linebacker. Now we have another hole in the Landon Collins Buffalo nickel role. Again, Cameron Curl could technically play it, but what Cameron Curl was doing last year was great. I mean, he would be in the slot sometimes. He'd be deep safety quite often. And I want him to continue doing what he was doing, and we just need to fill in the Landon Collins role rather than making Cameron Curl move down to that. Again, Jamin Davis almost looks like a waste of a player at this point. Why not at least try him in the Landon Collins role? Because that just seems like that could be his best potential ceiling at this point. But I say all of that to say that replacing Landon Collins is not going to be easy at all. And this situation is just crazy because we already knew Landon Collins was going to have to take a pay cut, but it's crazy because we paid him all of that money early on when he wasn't good because he wanted to force himself to be a safety. He didn't want to play linebacker. We finally moved him to linebacker, and then now we cut him. I mean, it sounds crazy when you say it on the surface like that, but it's really because of money. After cutting Landon Collins, we have somewhere around $12.5 million worth of cap space. But is that enough to go and get a Bobby Wagner? Is that enough to go and get one of these guards in free agency to replace Brandon Sheriff? Is that enough to re-sign Terry McLaurin long term? We still need more cap space, which is why I'm gonna do that video soon, probably tomorrow, breaking down how we can get more money from this roster with restructuring contracts and things like that. And what's even crazier about the situation is that it's been reported that we asked him to take a pay cut twice. So here's the quote from Landon Collins himself. Quote, "They asked me to take a pay cut. The first one was fine. Then they asked me to take another one. The money changed after they signed Carson Wentz. I'll just take my chance in free agency," unquote. So it sounds like Landon Collins was willing to take a pay cut at first, and whatever number they agreed upon, he was cool with it. Like, we're good. Okay, I'm gonna take a pay cut so y'all can create some more cap space to make this team better. Okay, that's cool. Then y'all went and traded for Carson Wentz, who's gonna eat up $28 million of the $33 million in cap space we had. So now y'all need me to take a larger pay cut because you wanted to trade for this quarterback who may not even be a long-term answer. And so basically he was like, no, I'm not about to take 2 pay cuts in a row that fast. It was already difficult enough for me to take one. Most players don't even take one. Landon Collins didn't want to take one before as well. Finally agreed to take one. They traded for Carson Wentz, and now they ask him to take a larger one. And I wonder how much of a pay cut would that have been, because we're only saving $6 million worth of cap space this season. So how much were they asking him to take a pay cut for? It's not like we gained a lot of money releasing Landon Collins. Like, it's not like we got back his entire $16 million that he was due this upcoming season, the 2022 season. We only got 6 of that 19 million back. We're still eating over $9 million worth of dead cap that's just going to eat up the cap space even though he's no longer on the team. So this is just a really interesting situation. It's going to be really hard to find another guy that can play in that similar role like Keanu Neal just did with the Cowboys, but we could try. Again, right now, my closest candidate is Jamin Davis. If it works out, it's a win-win because we didn't waste our 19th overall pick and we have somebody that can play that Landon Collins role, because this Jack Del Rio defense, I don't know what it's going to look like without Landon Collins in it now. The only time our defense looked elite at all last season, or even really good, you can't even necessarily say elite, was when Landon Collins was in that hybrid linebacker safety role. So without that, who knows, even with Chase Young and all of these guys coming back healthy, if our defense is even going to be really good without Landon Collins in that role. But at the same time, man, $45 million for 239 tackles. That is $188,284 per tackle. That's not a good statistic. But again, we were overpaying for him in the beginning, and then once he started to actually play well and almost earn the salary that he was making, we cut him. He was still overpaid in my opinion, even if we didn't cut him, depending on what the restructure may have been, the initial offer. But now, I mean, he's just gone, so who knows what's going on with the whole situation. But man, I mean, in hindsight, I guess the only way we could have fixed this was getting them to take a pay cut way sooner than this year, maybe like last off season. And also, of course, the Carson Wentz was the tipping point. We already were likely to cut him anyway, but then you bringing in Carson Wentz with that 28 mil, and granted you may be able to restructure that to get some cap space this season, but then if you restructure it, a lot of that money is going to go into next season, which ruins the ability to cut him for free next year. Because right now, the way Carson Wentz's contract is set up, he's a $28 million cap hit this year, but you can cut him next year and he will eat up $0 worth of dead cap, which is a cool out for a guy that we traded 2 third-round picks for. But if you restructure his contract to get more money now you won't have that $0 dead cap out anymore. Now he'll be instant guaranteed money on our dead cap going into 2023, depending on how you restructure it. So I don't know, man. It's ugly. And who knows what's about to go down, man, because I'm going to talk about this in my restructure video, but like, is Ioannidis likely to get traded? Are we potentially going to get rid of more guys? We already know Brandon Sheriff is walking. I've seen some people say about what if we cut Brandon Sheriff. Brandon Sheriff is already not on the books for 2022. He's an unrestricted free agent right now. So it's not like we're about to get a magical $15-18 million worth of cap space out of nowhere. The calculations and what cap space we have left already has Brandon Sheriff subtract off of it. So, I mean, things might get a little weird. May end up doing something with Tim Settle, Matt Ioannidis, Daron Payne. It's going to be really hard to re-sign J.D. McKissic and all of these guys, Cornelius Lucas, again, to extend Terry McLaurin. And like I keep saying, I want to be really aggressive in free agency. You got Carson Wentz. He may not be a long-term solution, so do what you can to build a team around him right now and see how many games you can go win. See if you can go to the playoffs. See if you can win a playoff game or two. Who knows? And I think getting a guy like Bobby Wagner would help immensely. But you got to create the cap space to be able to pay him whatever he wants to get paid. And then you're probably going to have to outbid a Super Bowl contender, because if I'm Bobby Wagner, he's only 31 years old. It's not like he's 38. But still, if I'm Bobby Wagner, I'm looking at going to a Super Bowl contender. And right now, the Washington Commanders may be a secretly really good team right now. But there's no way if the Chiefs want me, I'm going to the Washington Commanders unless the Washington Commanders pay me way more money than what the Chiefs are offering. So this can get really tricky in a lot of different ways, man. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please be on the lookout for all of the content I've already let y'all know about. Again, be on the lookout for a Carson Wentz film session and how he can fit in the Scott Turner's offense, and how basically this is going to be the best fit for Scott Turner's offense that we've had since we've had Scott Turner as an offensive coordinator. So I'm gonna break all of that down. And of course, man, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you see scrolled on the screen right now, man. I really appreciate y'all. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.